Everybody, so we've got Jamil here today. So, Jamil, you want to just introduce yourself? Tell us who you are.
Hi there, guys. My name's Jamil. I'm a dentist from South Wales. I own three practices. Two of them were existing practices. One of them was a squat, and I am launching my fourth one as a partnership in this year, hopefully.
Yeah, fantastic. And Jamil, how old are you?
I hate it when people ask me that. So I'm 29. I just turned 29. I bought a practice after VT, near enough one every year.
You've probably got to be one of the youngest dentists who owns that many practices, probably in the UK, I would say. I mean, I don't know many others that age that own as many as you, but there might be some out there, but you've definitely got to be in the top 0.01%, I would say.
Yeah, so it's interesting you say that because theoretically, the listeners don't know if I'm a trust fund baby, do they? So I say if you had massive capital behind you, let's say family wealth, you could easily go and buy X amount of practices. In my case, it was bootstrapped. So I took a massive loan out for my first practice, and then after that, we didn't need any loans going
So
forward.
you're the definition of a true entrepreneur, aren't you?
I hate that word. I genuinely hate that word because I believe a true entrepreneur doesn't need to tell people they're entrepreneurs or doesn't even. I just got to do whatever I got to do to pay my staff and keep a roof on top of my head.
Yeah, well, that's a great attitude to have, isn't it? Rather than labeling yourself like you see
Yeah,
a lot on social media these days. You see it in a lot of Instagram titles, don't you? You know, entrepreneur, this and that.
it's
But
crazy in
no,
my opinion.
it's what you say. The real entrepreneurs are the people that are actually out there in the dirt doing the work, not broadcasting it to the world.
Yeah, so instead of spending time changing your bio to entrepreneur, you should go learn about marketing or whatever. There's always something you can learn. So yeah, to be honest, um, I don't really mind what other dentists think of me or what my peers think of me. I just got to do whatever I got to do to make a living.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, after you graduated, then, so like, why did you buy a practice? Why'd you go down that route straight away?
So I worked, as an FD. My FD practice was absolutely amazing. It was about an hour drive. There's a place called Llandilo and Llandovery. Nobody's going to know that. It's near Brecon, and the other practice was near Swansea, past Swansea. It was an hour commute. So I did that, and then obviously you could go and look for an associate job. I started an associate job. They promised me the world. And I remember doing a root canal, and you've got them rotary motors and stuff like that. The file got stuck in the canal, and the motor just came off, and I was like, "Oh my gosh! Well, this isn't well maintained." So from that point, I was like, I want control over everything. My processes, I would, even within the first month, I was telling them, you guys need to improve this, to make it more efficient, but they just don't care. They were a massive NHS contract. They're still around. They're doing very well. So fair play to them. But I wanted to put my own stamp on a practice.
Okay, brilliant. So when you started looking around buying a practice, did you think about doing a squat back then?
Squat wasn't a thing back then when I bought. So this was pre-COVID. So this was tail end of 2019. Okay, a squat wasn't really a thing. You would buy a practice, and I know that makes me sound really old now, doesn't it? But yeah, so I don't know if you remember, Bobby. 5 years ago, people weren't opening up squats,
Yeah.
or you would need a massive social. Everyone was looking for an NHS element to keep themselves secure, basically.
Yeah, the market was very different, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Everybody was looking at big NHS contracts or that
yeah,
kind of security that an NHS practice or a contract brings you. Prior to COVID, yeah, even if you speak to the guys, the sales agents, that was the big thing back then, wasn't it? Everybody was looking for either something with an NHS contract or big NHS contract or something that was smaller where you could grow the private then on top of that.
yeah. So that's how the market was then. And then, so I bought that practice. Day before it was Christmas Eve, I think I got the signed off for it. Don't ever recommend doing that if you're doing that because all the bankers and stuff they want to go home early. That was a stressful time to say the least. Then COVID hit. COVID was one of the best things that's ever happened to me. We say like you look back at certain companies and you say they were at the right place at the right time. I think in dentistry, being a principal during COVID was probably one of the best things, whether you're private or NHS. because a lot of them say, oh, they didn't get income for 3 months, but after that, it was just like, it was ridiculous. Obviously, I'm very sorry people lost their lives and stuff like that. So we must not forget that. So, you know, that period between March to December of that year, 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty in the market. Okay, so
Yeah.
practices were on the market, but nobody was sure what to do. So I went and viewed a practice in June, and I put an offer in. I put a ridiculously low offer in. And then I said to them, I gave them a time limit, obviously. And then soon enough, they accepted my offer. And I bought that practice not knowing like what the market's going to happen. So I could have went bankrupt, or I could have been very secure in my future. And it worked out for the best. After that, the following year, we bought out a denture lab. We always wanted to bring that in house. And then after that, I opened a squat practice as probably the topic of the conversation. Sorry, Bobby, I was rambling on then.
No. People want to hear what you've got to say, not me. People hear about me. So, one of the things that I get asked a lot is, from younger dentists, is it the right time for me to buy a practice, so young, coming out of dentistry? Or is it better that I have, a few years experience, under my belt, clinically before I go into practice ownership? What's your kind of views on that?
So I don't believe I'm the best dentist money buys. I look after my patients and I do right by them. And sometimes you have to own your own practice to do right by them. Like, for example, if you work for a practice and they don't order the best composite, for example, yeah, you're getting better clinically, but are you actually doing right by the patient by not using the best materials? I believe that's a really good thing. I was very fortunate. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids when I first bought my first practice. So I didn't have much commitment.
Yeah.
I don't think you should wait till you're clinically experienced before you start owning a practice.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is, I speak to a certain number of dentists, under 30, and they're kind of toying with the idea of buying a practice, setting up a squat, and they're just not quite sure. But to me, I think the biggest thing is fear. Like, they're scared. It's almost like they know they want to do it, and they use that as possibly an excuse that they're not clinically experienced or got not enough years under their belt. But I think ultimately a lot of it comes down to the fear, of the unknown. And what's your kind of attitudes towards that?
So I'm fearless. I anyway. Like, I just think money's just a currency. So we're not killing ourselves for food, basically. So if you really understand that it is what it is, like, I might lose everything and I'll have to start over again. But that's where the best rewards come from, the most amount of risk. But when I bought my first practices, I was very naive. And over the years, so I've owned my practice for about 4 years now, 4.5 years. And it does grow you as a human being. I'm a lot calmer now. I used to get a little annoyed really quickly. It's like having children, they say, when you buy practices, is that you learn to really settle down. You learn to realize what's important and what's not important.
When you bought your first practice, did you actually go out and speak to other practice owners, or did you get any advice or have any mentors? Did you just go all in and just be like, no, I'll just figure it out as I go along? So
I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anything. I just went in there and I was like, I'm going to try my best. I go to the level, Bobby, which a lot of people might laugh. I didn't even research my competitors.
Okay.
So I didn't even know who my competitors were. And I found out my competitors as I was working there. I was like, oh, which other practice? I was like, oh, I've heard about that practice before. So no, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anything. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, where you say people want to do something, but they look for a reason. And I believe if I did a lot of research for my first practice, I don't think I would have bought it. And I'm really happy I went in there naive and I just figured things out.
Yeah, well, often I think you can overthink things as well, can't you? Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, buying a practice is a big financial commitment and it's a big investment in your life, one of the biggest investments you'll ever make. But at the same time, you can get really bogged down by overthinking things. and making it too complex, and then you build that up in your head, don't you, more and more and more, and ultimately then it stops you doing anything. But you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about risk. And if you don't take any risks in life, you'll never get anywhere. You just stay where you are. You have to take some risk of some sort if you want to progress and do better. Not everybody's got the appetite for that risk, which is fair enough. Some people are just happy doing what they're doing. But ultimately, if you want to do better, you want to go into ownership, you want to, be successful, you want more, financial freedom, you've got to take some risks somewhere, haven't you?
Yeah. So the key thing is I've never done it for more money.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. If you go and buy, if anyone's listening to this and they open up a squat and they think they're going to make bucket loads of money, it doesn't happen in the first 2 to 3 years. It takes a lot of time. You'll break even. Yeah. You'll probably earn just below what you would have earned as an associate dentist with a lot more stress, a lot more working hours. I think you have to spend time and reap the rewards slowly.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's a common misconception that going into practice ownership is a gateway to quick money. Financial freedom. It's not. It's a long-term, investment, especially with a squat. I mean, you can make good money, but at the same time, you're building value in that business, and ultimately, you won't ever really see the true value or the real financial rewards until you sell your practice. Or refinance it. It's as simple as that. It's good for cash flow. Once it's up and running and you're busy, it generates you income. You can pull yourself out. You can get associates in. So it can become more passive. But ultimately, for the big financial reward, ultimately comes when you sell your practice.
Yeah. So even when you come preparing, as a business, for it to sell, you have to a lot of the practices I see for sale, because I look at a lot of them, the goodwill's attached to the principal, and that's always a problem.
Right.
And it's a problem both ways. So it's a problem if the principal's generating a lot of the income, there's going to be a massive dip. But there are little opportunities where the principal hasn't got the best reputation and you could take over and turn it around. So that's what I look for more so.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really, really key points, is that when you're looking at practices to buy a practice, especially as a single-handed practitioner, when you're going into your first practice, you've got to look for the opportunity, haven't you? So, if you're buying something that's completely maxed out already, where's the opportunity to grow that business? And I think that's one of the key things that you've done really well, is trying to find those practices where you can really go in and add value. So, where there's opportunity to grow that business.
So now I believe we've got a standardized procedure for whenever we go into a practice. So that's changed a lot over the few years. But I think there's always going to be opportunities within dentistry. But to answer your question about income and cash, so your driving force can't be money. If you're going to go into practice ownership, it can't. Seriously, just quit straight away. It's not worth it. But it is nice. So I test my philosophy. I tell my wife this. My philosophy is that I have ideas in my head and I test my ideas, and a byproduct of my ideas working is more profitability. That's all. Okay. My main goal isn't to be as profitable as possible. My goal is just to see if my ideas work. I've worked in other industries, and the profitability in dentistry is crazy compared to any other industry. A lot less competitive as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then, so after you bought this practice, then what made you want to set up a squat?
So our first site we outgrew, but we didn't have space space to grow anymore. So I had this practice this building. It was an OGP practice, 3,000 square foot, massive. And I was like, yeah, I just seen it one day while I was doing reception duty in my other practice. And I was like, yeah, you know what? That tickles my fancy. I went there. I offered them a third of the asking price with a penalty. And they accepted.
Was that a freehold?
So basically it is a freehold, but it's got 80 years left on the lease or something.
So it's like a long lease. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a paid ground rent or something.
Okay. No, fantastic. But what was the reason though? There must have been a reason why you wanted to do that, rather
It's
than
because
buy another practice. Then at that point,
so buying a practice and adding value is the easiest thing you'll ever do. Genuinely, it's so easy. Starting a squat practice, it requires different challenges that you don't realize till you're in it, because you have to almost build up a practice, build up a brand, build up a reputation. You have to do the marketing. It's a different ball game. You get to design the surgery. When you buy a practice, you usually get the chair. The chair is what it is. The plugs are where they are. That's it.
yeah.
So I think,
Ultimately, what you say, it's a different skill set, isn't it?
yeah.
I mean, I've noticed that as well. I mean, there's been practice owners who I speak to who already own practices who then want to set up a squat as another practice like what you've done, but they don't know how to do that, because, like you said, they've just fallen into a practice ownership where everything's already just been done for them essentially, and they've just gone in and taken that over. Whereas with a squat, it's like, well, now I've got to really dig deep and do something from scratch.
Yeah,
So
it's hard. It's a lot harder.
yeah, it's very different experience. So when you set up your squat, how did you go about it?
So I wouldn't recommend this. But basically, you get a tape measure, you measure all the rooms. You get a piece of A4 paper and you just say, yeah, I want a surgery here, I want a surgery here, I want a surgery here. This is not the best way of doing it, and I wouldn't probably advise anyone to do it. And then you're like, that looks interesting. And then I'm quite good friends with a few dental engineers. So then I was on the phone to them. How long is a dental chair and how much space? So you need 850 mil on top of the headrest, don't you? So I was like, how much space? And then I'm drawing a semicircle on the top of the head, making sure I got enough space. It was interesting. So I'm not a very good forward planner. I just like coming to problems and be like, oh yeah, this needs to be moved slightly. It's a more expensive way of doing it, but I just can't do it the other way.
Yeah, I'll say a majority of dentists are probably going to do it the other way. I would say
Yeah.
the way that you did it. So I mean, I know how you did yours very manually, basically. So you pretty much designed it and built it yourself, essentially. Yeah.
The great thing is, I know where every pipe is. I know where every 3-core cable is.
Yeah.
And so even then, to the point where I was like, damn it, what services does a chair need? So I'm looking at the ATEC manuals and Belmont manuals. I was like, what services? And everything is online, believe it or not. You can find out everything.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of information out there. I mean, I guess with dentists, the biggest problem is they don't have the time to do that. You know, if you're busy working as an associate, and then it's weighing up the cost as well. You know, what's it going to take me? How much is it going to cost me to take time out of surgery to do all of that when I could be in surgery earning more than what I could be paying somebody else to do that?
Yeah.
Trying to find that balance.
And another great thing that if you do it the correct way, your way, is that once they concrete the floor, you're not losing sleep at night thinking, I hope this is right. Because if it's wrong, it's not fun.
Yeah, I'll bet you'd the last thing you want is people digging your floor back up. You didn't have to do that, did you?
No.
No,
I was close.
So when you set up your squat, what do you think? What were the biggest challenges? You know, compared to you've already got existing practice, so you know how to run a practice at this point. But obviously, starting from scratch is completely different. So, what were your challenges at this point?
Building a list, I would say, is really challenging. Very challenging compared to. So, if you look at other practices, so my first one I bought, when you take over an existing practice, let's say that practice was poorly managed, dentist wasn't the best, you go in there, they think you're the best thing since sliced bread, genuinely. So theoretically, you're more likely to get reviews, blah, blah, blah. So you grow exponentially a lot quicker. But that curve for a squat practice is a lot slower because you don't have the same volume of patients coming in. So the word of mouth and stuff like that. I'm not a massive believer of word of mouth, but there is an aspect to it, but it's a lot slower. Like in my first practice, you could treat about 50 patients a day. You think about it, if 40 of them have good experience, you got 40 of them saying, oh yeah, go consider Forest Dental. You're getting about 10, 12 reviews. With a squat practice, you're getting about 8 patients. So you can see it, just the economies of scale a lot bigger.
Definitely. I mean, ultimately, that is the biggest challenge in any new practice is building a list, getting your patients through your doors. And marketing is obviously hugely important when you don't have an existing practice to lean on. So when you were setting up the new practice, you're really, you have a big focus on this area with marketing. I know you've done a lot of this yourself. So how did you go about marketing it then? So getting patients through those doors, what were your strategies?
So if anything, if anyone's learned anything about me till this point, is that I'm not organized. So I was like, shit, I now need to get a website design. Like, because I was so focused on, so, you do everything like side by side, like so when you were probably doing your practice, you had like contractors going in, website stuff, all of that's working, marrying up together. For me, I was like, building work's really done. I don't have a website. So I was like, I need to make a website. And I remember making a logo one evening. I was like, I need to make the logo quickly. So then, I don't really have a strategy. You just spend on Google ads, Facebook ads. So we are quite a big spender on Google ads. So, a lot of people say, oh, it's a lot cheaper, but the cost of marketing is surprisingly quite high. And that's one thing I would say.
Yeah, that is one of the biggest questions that I get asked is when you set up a squat, how much do you need to spend on marketing and how much do you need to budget for it? And when I tell people how much you really need to spend, they're actually gobsmacked.
What's the figure, Bobby?
So, I mean, for us at the moment, we spend about up to $4,000 a month.
Yeah, that's
between different avenues. So Google, Facebook. We still do other marketing as well. It's not all paid marketing or digital, should I say. So, we've done leaflet drops, local marketing. And, for us, one of the big things was we've got a great location. We're very, very visible. So that was fantastic for us when we were setting up because everybody saw us being built. So the whole area knew, we're a brand new practice. We had banners. So, from that point of view, things were very, very good. One of the things we didn't do very well when we first set up was SEO. Really, really important. Something that can sometimes get overlooked if you don't know what it is. But, search engine optimization, you've got to get your website to rank no matter what.
Yeah, so I would agree with, I'm spending about 3.5 to 4 grand. I think that's quite a sensible amount to spend on squat practice. But if you calculate that, that's 50 grand a year. And times that by 4, okay, the amount of money you save compared to a squat practice, existing practice, you could see. But people don't realize, even with existing practices, you still need to spend on Google ads.
Well, I think that's what happens with. I think the existing practices have the opposite problem, in that a lot of them don't do enough marketing because they just rely on what they have. And when I say, I don't just mean on paid marketing, I just mean internal marketing. We had this whole conversation yesterday with a group of implant dentists, and some of them have got their own practices where they're not even really internally marketing to their own existing patients. And they've got huge patient lists who probably want this treatment but are going elsewhere. I'm going to just give you an example. We had a patient come here last week for an Invisalign consultation. And I asked her, I ask all my patients, how did you hear about us? Where have you come from? And she's like, look, I'm at a practice locally in town. I know the practice and they offer this treatment. And so I asked her, why have you come here? And it's like, I don't really know I don't think my practice does it. And it's like, well, I'm actually pretty sure that they do, but she's just never been marketed to within her own practice. So she's landed at my doorstep, which is fantastic for me. But, a lot of existing practices, they fall behind on that for whatever reason.
No, I agree. Internal marketing is quite large, quite important. I personally aren't a massive fan of internal marketing. I want to get the patient that are sure they want to go. So for example, we don't really internally market implants at all. Is because I want that patient that comes to me and says, yeah, I've suffered years with a denture. I want to go for implants. I want them to do the research themselves and be sure of a specific treatment. But I see the importance of it. As you grow as a company, as a practice, as practices, you realize there's only so much you could do on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, so to answer your question about marketing, is that my strategy is try and get as many leads as possible, but make sure they're relevant leads. That's what I try and do.
Yeah, qualified leads.
Yeah.
That is what we're looking for. So leads that are not just wasting your time, but leads that, you know, are qualified to a certain extent, and there's different ways that you can, you know, make them qualified. You know, taking paid deposits, you know, little things like that before they're booking for consultations, TCOs ringing them beforehand, you know, having that conversation, giving them rough costs, you know, before they turn up. And then when you tell them it's 2.5 grand for an implant, they're like, oh, I thought it was, you know, £1,000, you know, avoiding those type of situations. And how about building your team in the practice? So in the squat, you know, obviously binding resistant practice, you've got a team. So how did you find that different when you set up the squat?
So basically, so my setup's quite different in the fact that all the staff members are expected to rotate between all practices. It's hard setting up a team because what I could do, I could get a new member of staff and put them in one of my existing sites and get them trained up to believe in our ethos. But you know, when you're starting up from new, it's really hard to get somebody trained up to your ethos. And I think that's one thing most squat practice owners will find difficult.
Yeah, definitely is one of the biggest challenges for anybody who's set up a squat. And, you know, I was really fortunate that I had team members follow me from, you know, historically places where I'd worked. I didn't poach them, but they approached me, which was fantastic. But ultimately, I believe one of these things is that the more you put out there, the more people start hearing about you, hearing about what you're doing. You naturally will start to attract the kind of people who fit with your ethos and your vision as well. You know, I'm a strong believer in that. It won't always work, and you won't be able to build your whole team like that, but it's a good starting point, I would say. Don't you think?
Yeah. So I think regarding importance, obviously you need to get your squat practice up and running. You have to pass CQC. You have to get a team. You need to start marketing, but everything should be happening at the same time. So I was very fortunate in the fact that, let's say you got a massive loan for a squat practice, or you got a loan, or you're investing a lot of money. The last thing you want to do is to hire too early for staff, and then they're just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. It's a really difficult balance. So I was quite fortunate in the fact that I could put them on other practices, so they were always utilized.
Yeah.
And the squat practice helped me, believe it or not, is that we rarely get a locum nurse now because we've got enough team to go between all of our practices.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a really key point. You know, there is some dead time, you know, when you open a squat, and the last thing you want is your team members to be sat around doing nothing. So you've got to manage that team process really effectively. And it's really hard to find that balance between having too little and then too many for, you know, at the beginning, but then having enough for when you grow the practice and when you've got to that point, and then not having to rush around or then get locums in, you know, and who are eating into your costs significantly. So that's a really good point. But, you know, building a team is very, very, it's a brand new skill that most associates don't have. So even in your existing practice, what do you think that dentist can do, you know, to help them manage that process, you know, to become better HR, better at, you know, better with people and better at becoming leaders of that team?
So one thing I found, you know, the one that comes to an interview, this is my red flag 101. If a nurse comes to the interview and just is constantly yapping away, they're not the right fit for me. So all of our nurses were quite in their own cocoon, and then you can see them all blossoming now and be very confident in their own self. But I don't get along with people that are overly confident, because I'm not overly confident myself. And sometimes, so I had via 2PI inherited staff members before that were super confident, and sometimes it would feel like they were overpowering us in a consultation, and sometimes when we're doing a checkup and stuff. So,
do you not feel that sometimes you might need somebody like that though in your team? Because you can't. I mean, from my point of view, you can't have the same personality type for every single member of your team, because every member of your team has a different role. Some of your team members have got to be super confident. You know, the ones who are answering the phones, looking after your new patients or treatment coordinating, you know, they've got to be like that. Somebody who's in the background, you know, or a nurse might not need to be as confident, but I feel like there's there's a fine balance, but you've got to have different personality types in different roles. That's what I know. Because I'll tell you, one of the things that I noticed is when we were recruiting for the practice, when we were looking for somebody for front of house, we were getting a lot of nurses applying for the job because they didn't want to be a nurse anymore. And they wanted to move out of that role. They wanted to do more treatment coordinating. They wanted to be on the front desk. But what I found with a lot of them when we interviewed them was just that they actually had no confidence and they were just very, very quiet and very shy. And they would not have been a good fit for that role.
Yeah. So to go back to that point, I think you have to be super careful. So if you asked me 3 years ago, that's what I would want. But you have to live the test of time. You'll see. You'll ask practice owners that have owned a practice for 5-10 years and say, do you want somebody like that? Yes, it's great for your business short term, but sometimes they do cause a lot of issues long term. So just keep that in mind. And it's funny you say that, Bobby. What the hell? What's happening here? It's funny you say that, Bobby, but when you lived it, you'll remember us having this conversation one day and you'll be like, Jamal, I can actually see why. But for example, I've got a lovely staff member called Chloe. She does a lot of our front desk stuff. When I first interviewed her, she couldn't look at me in the eye. Okay. And now I tell her she's one of the best receptionists money can buy.
Okay.
And it's just by giving somebody the chance to develop, it does make a difference.
Yeah, you got to let them flourish, definitely.
Yeah. So
you got to give them time and let them.
Sometimes she's got a bit too much attitude now, and I have to give her a rollicking sometimes. But but yeah, she's great at converting patients. And to be honest, I don't believe my front of house needs to convert any patients personally. I personally believe your practices have such a good reputation that even if they deal with the worst receptionist on front desk, they'll still want to book in.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that. But I feel like when you start a squat, you don't have that reputation to begin with. That's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing. When you're a squat, you're nothing. Nobody knows what you do. It's only after that 12 months when you built that reputation, then you can start to develop that. But it's very difficult to do that right from the get-go. So, how long has that squat been open now?
May. So how long has it been since May? July, August, September, October, November, December, January. That is 8 months.
Yeah, brilliant. So how long did it take you to get busy?
Well, so this is one thing people don't realize about private practices is that you don't need to be that busy to be profitable.
Yes.
So, for example, when picking so we'll talk about associates. When you pick an associate, just be careful when you hire an associate that they haven't done the NHS for the last 15 years, because in their eyes, they'll look at that diary and say that diary is really quiet because they're used to 10-minute back to back. But you wouldn't want, that's one of the issues with associates, but like you could easily do £2,000 worth of treatment a day, easy. And you just need to do a root canal crown, and then you need to do a few extractions, a denture fit, and that's it.
Yeah.
So you could probably, in comparison to the NHS, you could probably do 2 hours. And you could probably make the same amount of money privately as you would the whole day or the whole week, near enough.
Yes. I've had this conversation recently with quite a few dentists, and dentists complaining that they've got white space in their book, associates, and their day rate is still higher with those white spaces than on some of the days when their books are full. Believe it or not. But
it's greed, isn't it?
It's one of those. And when you're coming from the NHS, we're very, very used to being busy. But I think one of the main benefits of being a squat is that you have time to give that time to your patients. Spend an hour with them at least in that first consultation. Take photos, scan them, show them everything, give them all that you can. And, that fills your space pretty comfortably. Even you generate the back of that. If you're getting them in, 30 minutes for a new patient consult, 20 minutes, whatever it is, what use is that what is the point in seeing a patient for a 30-minute new patient consultation when you're a new practice? And then you've got half an hour of dead time after that, and you just rush them in and out, and then you've got no one else to see for the next hour.
So I book new patient exams in for 10 minutes. They don't need a minute longer than that. So what I do, so I'm quite different in that I want to chill. That's it. All right. I'd rather see dead space. I tell the reception team, do not book them in. Book them in with an associate. But I'm very fortunate, I know, to be able to do that. But basically, what I do, I get a new patient in, do a chart, do a BP, take the necessary X-rays. I'll take photos, and I'll tell them I'll send you a video.
Yeah.
And you're better off sending them a Loom video, is called, rather than spending, because believe me, you patients don't listen to a word you say when you're just rambling on. So when they got that, when they're at home and you just play their video and they just have a look, they can see it in their own time, they can replay it. They're not under that pressure. So that's what we've started to do now. Loom videos and photos, massive.
Yeah, are you finding the Looms working well? I mean, that's something I'm looking at introducing very
phenomenal.
soon. But yeah, for our consultations, for follow-ups. But do you find it's working well in your practice?
Phenomenal.
So for the people who are listening who don't know what Loom is, you want to just explain to them quickly? It's really simple.
Yeah, so Loom is a software company that's actually quite amazing what they've done. But basically, it records your whole screen and you can speak on top of it. So what I do, I'll open up a PowerPoint, I'll put somebody's photos, I'll put their X-rays, and I'll just go through every single tooth and say, look, thank you for visiting us, blah, blah, blah. I'd recommend a root canal or extraction on this tooth, and I'll just work their way around. You send them a link, so it's not like you're sending them a file. And then it tells you how many times they watched it, if they've got any questions. And the AI feature is really good. So it'll break down your video into like pricing. It'll break it down into the risks and benefits. It's just really good. I would recommend giving it a go. I think it's about 79 quid for a year or something.
Yeah, it's not massively expensive. No. Yeah. No, it's definitely, like I said, it's definitely something we're going to introduce in the practice very soon and start trialing it. And I'll share my feedback with you, exactly how we find it. But so far, the feedback I'm hearing is very good.
So I've had, it's better than sending a letter. So any of those that are sending letters, chuck that. That's some old age stuff. That is. Everyone wants to.
Yeah, it's not just that. Patients don't read them.
Yeah. That's it.
They don't read it unless it's literally so concise that you've got it all in one page. They're not going to read 10 pages of treatment plan letters. About each tooth individually, and it's a massive waste of time.
It takes me about 7 minutes to record the Loom video for a new patient.
Yeah, I mean, compared to some dentists, I mean, I don't do this, but I know some dentists who literally go home and they end up spending about 2-3 hours a night writing treatment plan letters, and it's crazy. It's such an inefficient use of time. I mean, patients have got to be consented for, and definitely they've got to understand what their options are. But I think in the new generation, moving forwards, definitely better technologies out there, and you've got to move with the times, definitely.
But it's great because I send a video to a patient and I'm like, you give me a call if you want to go ahead with it. They could give me a call or they WhatsApp us back, and I'm like, we'll book them in for this, and that's it. Done.
Yeah. No, fantastic.
And they were like, sometimes I book them back in for reviews just to ask, do they understand everything? Jamil, I understand everything. Just get it done and that's it. So I believe using Loom for every one of your new patients, I think it'll increase your turnover by at least 15%.
Okay, well, that's quite a significant figure.
Genuinely 15%. If you could take a photo, send a Loom video to every one of your patients, the patients will be far better consented, and I think you make a lot more money.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree with that, especially from a consent point of view.
Yeah.
So after you set this squat up, you're now in the process of setting up another squat. So it definitely hasn't put you off, has it?
No, it doesn't put me off, because if you can get everything at the right price point, your risk is quite low. So if you're going spending X huge amount of money where it's quite a big financial risk, then yeah, I would be worried. I'm very fortunate in the fact that I set up squat practices with cash now, so I don't rely on any external funding, and I know I'm very fortunate to say that. By that alone, I don't have the stress a lot of people have, thinking I've got a massive loan to pay at the end of the month. So yeah, but as a result, I would sacrifice on my design and my practice. I would want to make them simple. I wouldn't want like fancy TVs and stuff. I would keep it to the bare minimum.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that you made there. I mean, there's a massive focus at the moment on making practices look, overly, like stunning, and a huge amount of money can get wasted on that, with the interior design and what you're doing with that practice. I mean, don't get me wrong, like when you're a squat practice, you have to make your practice look nice. It has to look appealing, because that's one of the things that will draw patients into your practice. But there's a very fine line between making it look nice and make it look appealing, but suiting it to your clientele. So the type of patients that you want to bring into your practice, that's really important. But managing that with not breaking the bank and just going ridiculous, which some practices are doing, and I think that's fueled a lot, by social media and Instagram and things like this. But
They
also,
got massive risks.
yeah, well, what the biggest thing that I found is that we've made our practice look very, very nice. It's very different. It doesn't look like a dental practice. Doesn't feel like a dental practice when you're in it. And but what I've realised is that once the patients are through your doors and you've done that consultation, as soon as they've got your trust, they don't actually care that much what it looks like. They genuinely don't. They're like,
But I think, Bobby, I spoke to you about.
yeah, as long as they're happy with you, the dentist, they're happy with the team, they've bought into you. They genuinely don't care what it looks like afterwards. They're like, no, it's fine. Yeah, we like you, we trust you. I can set another practice up down the road and make it look like a dump, and 99% of them will follow.
So, Bobby, this is interesting you say that, because when we first had the conversation, you were very adamant the practice needed to look really nice.
Yeah. I still believe that they need to look nice. Don't get me wrong. They've got to look nice because
It doesn't need to look like an art gallery.
yeah, it doesn't need to look like that. What I'm saying is that make it look nice, but don't break the bank doing that.
Yeah.
And think about the type of patients you want to bring into your practice, because alternatively you can have the opposite problem. If you make it look too nice, some people will think that it's too expensive and they can't afford it. Yeah, that's another thing. So you got to think about what type of practice you want to be, what type of patients you want to bring in, and then ultimately what type of environment would those type of patients like to come into.
Yeah, so I think there is a market for making a practice really nice. I know there's some guys up north that make their practice very Instagrammable, because their clients are from Instagram. They're that generation, so you could see it's worth them making that investment. But I think if you're a standard practice and you just want to do good quality dentistry, I don't think it needs to look like the Love or the most 5-star hotel. I think it needs to look nice, but I don't think. I've been to a lot of practices, Bobby, and I've looked to buy a lot of practices. And I think you guys, everyone on Instagram compares it to the best, but you haven't seen the worst and what patients are used to. They're used to that old school NHS practice with that green floor, green doors.
Yeah, for a lot of them, just coming into a nice, clean, just nice environment, is a big difference in itself. Let alone walking into anything, that looks spectacular.
So I think people's vision of what patients think is nice and clean is different to what dentists think it is. So I've been to practice some of them. I'm like, I would never want to be a patient here. And then I go to other, and I've been to like my practice. And then when I go back to my practice, I see why people say it's clean, it's bright, blah, 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 because you've seen the other side, what people are used to.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I think we're far extending our time.
No, don't worry. No, thanks. It's been great. I just want to ask one final question then. So, for the guys who are starting out in practice right now in 2024, what would be your top 3 tips, for these guys who are starting out from scratch?
So these people want to go down squat practices, and they
want to open a squat practice, or even if they want to buy a practice this year, what would be your top 3 bits of advice?
Forget how good you are as a dentist and focus on the external business side. That's number 1. Number 2, if you look for a good location, so if you find a good location, remember to just have a look around and just see, does the numbers work for you? Just because you find a good location might mean that it's not profitable by the time you pay your rents and rates. That's another thing. Check how much rates are. You don't only pay rent or lease. You have to pay something called rates, which is basically council tax for businesses. My third thing is that really understand marketing to another level. No more than all of your competitors combined. Understand Google ads, understand Facebook ads, because that's what's going to bring you your patients in.
Yeah, definitely. No, those are absolutely brilliant points. And the marketing thing is fundamental. You can't run a practice without marketing yourself. So the
Yeah.
more you can learn, and you don't really want to, you can give that on to agencies and other people, but you've got to have an understanding of it yourself in order to do that. Otherwise, it can be a real money pit, can't it? And
Yeah, you'll go through money quick.
yeah, very, very quick. No,
So I
fantastic.
log in to give everyone an example, I log into Google Ads every day and I'll make sure they're doing it right.
Yeah. But
Yeah, but
you know how to do that. But
yeah,
most dentists won't know how to do that
yeah.
because they haven't taken the time to go out and learn. But no, fantastic. Thank you for
So,
that, Bill. Yeah, no, that's been great. Sharing your pearls of wisdom. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, where can they find you?
dentist.jamil. Unfortunately, I don't offer any mentorship or anything like that. I can give you a bit of advice. My hands are a bit full at the moment. I barely have enough time to spend with my wife. I don't think I have time to mentor. But yeah, if somebody wants advice or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. I'll give them advice.
I'm
I don't
sure there'll be
mind.
some people that just want to follow your journey.
Yeah, I don't mind if somebody wants to shadow me. They can come shadow me if they want. And I'll show them how I do what I do. But yeah.
All right, fantastic. No,
Is that
thank you for
okay?
that, Jamil. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you ever so much, Bobby.
Bye.